Wow, this is awesome. Thank you guys all for joining us so much. This is a really great turnout. We're here to talk about Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 end of life, what it means and what your options are. My name is Michael Myers. I'm the managing director at Tag One. I've been working with Drupal for a little over 16 years. Started the first venture-backed Drupal-based startup company and was CTO of the first top 100 Drupal website. Prior to joining Tag One, I was VP of Developer Relations and Developer Marketing at Acquia. And I'm joined today by Jeremy Andrews, the founding partner and CEO of Tag One. Jeremy has been involved with Drupal for 19 years, since the very beginning. And he's one of the few people in the world that have contributed to every version of Drupal core, which is pretty amazing. In addition to his work on Drupal, Jeremy is involved in many other open source projects, including Goose, which is the most scalable load testing framework that's out there. Jeremy created Goose and maintains it. And he's got a background in Linux kernel and firewall development. For those of you who aren't familiar with Tag One, we work with a lot of technologies, but we're really well known for being the #2 all-time contributor to Drupal. We have the largest concentration of core maintainers, framework managers, subsystem owners, et cetera, of any organization. And I should also note that we are one of 2 providers of Drupal 6 long-term support and one of the 5 Drupal 7 extended support providers. We have very unique and deep insight that we're going to share with you today, and hopefully we'll get some time at the end to answer all of your questions. In addition, we are an enterprise supporting partner of the Drupal Association. We also donate a full-time resource to the DA to run and manage the Drupal.org infrastructure and tooling to enable the community to develop Drupal. And I would really like to ask you for a moment here, if you make a living or a profit in part by your association or use of Drupal, the platform and the community really need your support. So please take a moment to donate to the Drupal Association today. Thank you. All right, so let's cover what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what Drupal end of life means, when it's going to happen, and how that differs for both Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. Why widely used and very popular versions of Drupal do reach end of life, the practical implications and what this means and what your options are, what the Drupal vendor extended support is, or ES or D7 ES, why extended support only covers Drupal 7 and not Drupal 8, how the program operates and what it covers. And like I said, we'll leave some time at the end for your questions. So please put them into the chat here. Jeremy is going to collect them and he'll go over everything at the end. So what is Drupal end of life? Just to step back and give everybody some quick perspective. First, it really helps to have at least a quick understanding of what life itself is. What does it mean to, build, run, manage, and maintain a version of Drupal? So for Drupal core, forgetting about contrib for a moment here, the community comes together and there's formal roadmaps and release processes and release schedules. There's strict guidelines by which you do releases and by which code is developed and how initiatives are run and maintained. And all of the code goes through automated in-depth testing. And to give you a sense of how amazing this is, the Drupal automated testing system does over 90,000 hours of testing each year. That's 10 years of work being done in parallel in a single year. So that's pretty insane. And that's really what helps make Drupal what it is. But of course, Drupal wouldn't be what it is without people. We need people to manage these systems. We need people to participate in the security team, all of those core committers and core maintainers and code contributors. And all of these people, or the vast majority of these people anyway, are doing this on their own personal time. Very few people are being paid to contribute to Drupal, and a few companies are paying people to contribute to Drupal. And so, even the ones that are being paid have very limited amounts of time. And as you can see, this is a pretty intense process. And so when Drupal reaches end of life, when a version reaches end of life, what happens is that community development stops. There's no more code enhancements, no bug fixes, no new feature releases. Core development stops entirely. In fact, the issue queues, where on Drupal.org we share code and work together, the issue queues for Drupal core are locked. So you can't contribute to Drupal 6 core anymore. When 7 and 8 reach end of life, you will not be able to contribute anything to them on Drupal.org's issue queues. And so that's important to note. The other thing is that contrib does remain open, or at least historically has with Drupal 6. Contrib still is open and people can contribute to it. But what we saw is that very little to no Drupal 6 contributed module development happened after the end of life of Drupal 6, and you should expect the same for 7 and 8. There will be some updates and enhancements, but for the large part, people will have moved on. All that tooling I mentioned, the issue queues, the automated testing infrastructure, all of that's likely going to be decommissioned as well. And that automated testing infrastructure really is what makes the development process happen so well. Without that, individuals are going to find it harder to run and test things, to share tests, which mean potentially more bugs, more regressions in code. So not only is it difficult to work together as a community because the community systems are locked, but all the tooling is either gone or very difficult to manage on your own. Security, this is one of the most critical aspects. Obviously, it's imperative that your sites maintain their security and integrity. The Drupal security team is no longer going to review issues and problems with that version of Drupal once it goes end of life. And so this is particularly important because what we found is that when an issue with, say, Drupal 7 or 8 was found, it often, or sometimes applied to Drupal 6, and we had to backport a patch for that. And so, the concern here is that when a security problem is found in a newer version of Drupal, and it applies to an older version of Drupal, you don't want your site to be open to known vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, it doesn't really take a lot of expertise to exploit these vulnerabilities. There are tools out there that fingerprint Drupal websites, automate attacks, and so being lax on security, in any instance, not just Drupal, oftentimes it's not just a matter of if you're going to get hacked. It's more likely a matter of when. And we'll dig into dependencies a lot more later on in this talk, but Drupal is dependent upon at least PHP for 7, and in 8, a lot of other things. And these dependencies have their own release cycles, and they too go end of life. And that's a big factor in how we determine end of life for Drupal. And so all of these things together are why we started extended support programs, because they help you address all the problems and challenges you'd have on your own without them. So when do Drupal 7 and 8 reach end of life? Well, we've been given a little bit of an extension on Drupal 7, which is great. Originally, the Drupal community policy had been to maintain only 2 major versions of Drupal. So when Drupal 9 came out earlier this year, 7 should have reached end of life. But because it's such a popular platform, such the largest user base of the community, we extended it another year. And then unfortunately with COVID, given the amount of effort and energy and resources and finances it takes to do migrations, as a community, we came together and decided that we will support Drupal 7 for yet another year to give company and people the opportunity to deal with this under hopefully better situations for all of us. And so Drupal 7 end of life is November 2022, which is a little under 2 years away. And that may seem like a ways off, but we're going to talk later about why you need to be thinking about this now, have a plan in place, and be getting your things together. Drupal 8, on the other hand, is an entirely different story. When Drupal 8 was released, the Drupal end-of-life policy was changed. It was no longer we're going to support 2 versions. And this is because Drupal 8 was the first version of Drupal that introduced major dependencies. Symfony 3, for example. And so the challenge here is that Symfony 3, which Drupal 8 is dependent upon, goes end of life itself. And after November 2021, will no longer receive security updates. And so it's not really plausible for the Drupal community to maintain another framework. And so that's going to be a challenge. And then, the other factor is that, upgrading has never been easier. We made a huge concerted effort with the start of Drupal 8 to make the upgrade path pretty straightforward. Historically, the difference between, any major version was massive. 7 is a functional program, 8 is object-oriented. the path of Drupal 8 to 9 is very easy. And so given these things combined, these dependencies on other platforms and the ease of upgrading, the date for Drupal 8 has not and is not changing. And it's less than a year away. And that's November 2021. So you definitely need to be thinking about that if you're on Drupal 8. I think a fair question, one that we get a lot is, Drupal 7 is one of the most popular, if not, probably more people use Drupal 7 than every other version of Drupal combined. So why would the Drupal community, end of life that version? And we covered a little bit of this earlier, right? It's a legacy platform. At this point, it's almost 10 years old. By the time it reaches end of life, it's going to be 12. You factor in the fact that it's been under development, a few years before it was released. It's going to be 15 something years old by the time it reaches end of life, which is a pretty amazing run for any technology platform. I don't know about you, but I don't have too much software on my laptop that is 15 years old. I still don't have any cell phones that are 15 years old. So 15 years is a really impressive run. Bandwidth, we talked about this earlier. It's just not plausible for the community to support all these versions simultaneously. So it just can't happen. And then interest, right? If people aren't being paid to work on it, if a lot of the work is being done by volunteers, they're interested in, what's innovative. And the people that develop Drupal core are amazing, talented people, and they want to stay amazing, talented people. And so they're going to be working on the latest and greatest, which is Drupal 9 and 10. And even the people that are paid to work on Drupal, they have very limited hours. Organizations that are paying them to focus on specific things. So even if there is the money, there isn't the time. And frankly, innovation. Innovation is what's best for Drupal, even if it isn't necessarily best for each user on Drupal 7. The best thing for Drupal as a community is to end of life old versions so that we can focus our limited resource and efforts on what's new. People wouldn't continue to adopt Drupal if we didn't continue to make it great. So if we want to see Drupal around in 20 years, we can't keep focusing on older versions of Drupal. That's what extended support is going to be for, to help organizations help themselves with vendors and partners to take care of that burden. So again, Drupal 8, entirely different story, built on these dependencies like Symfony, Twig, and Guzzle. There was a huge philosophical change in the Drupal community when 8 came out. Historically, we had built a lot of Drupal ourselves, and we decided we're going to get off this sort of self-contained island that is Drupal, and we're going to leverage a lot of other platforms to make it great. And that's what we did. And the sum of the whole is much greater than the parts. These frameworks have enabled us to do so many things, but these dependencies go end of life too. They have their own release schedules. And, as I mentioned, with Symfony 3 reaching end of life, we have some options. We could fork it, we could maintain it, but that is cumbersome. We could, try and, get Drupal 8 to work with Symfony 4. That's a huge amount of effort. And so what we do is we upgrade Drupal to work with the latest version of Symfony, which is much better. And the thing is that with Drupal 8, we also adopted a new versioning scheme here. And we adopted semantic version, or SEMVer. And this really impacts, how you number releases, right? What's the difference between 8.1 and 8.2, 8 and 9? And under the rules of semantic versioning, when an API change is required in Drupal core, you have to increase the major version number. And so when we upgrade Symfony, Drupal 8 to support Symfony 4, that requires core API changes. Therefore, you have Drupal 9. And so really, in some ways, it's just a number change. In fact, there's very little new code in Drupal 9. It's largely deprecated code. So if you've been keeping your sites and systems up to date, moving from 8 to 9 should be a relatively seamless process. And I just know that all of you guys have kept your sites up to date, so this should be no issue. All righty. What are your options? If you're on Drupal 7, there's a handful of options that you could explore outside of extended support, some high cost and low cost options. We'll start with the high cost option, my least favorite, which is do nothing. And I wish I could say that I'm shocked and surprised at the number of organizations that choose to go this path, but it's obscene. This is high cost because of the security vulnerabilities, the problems, the legacy code, not being able to support, maintain your site. There are many options we're going to go through here that are not very expensive. please do not do nothing. It is not good for your organization. And while it may seem easy and cheap, it is in fact difficult and going to be a huge pain in the butt. Another option you have is to migrate from 7 to 9. Even though there are a lot of major changes under the hood as far as how the technology works, a lot of the concepts are the same. And if your team is familiar with Drupal, it may be an easier transition for you. There are many reasons to upgrade from 8 to 9. But upgrades and migrations are an effort, and so a lot of organizations, I think, will and should take a step back and say, hey, where should I go from here? You should do an analysis, make a good business decision, and if that is to migrate to another CMS, you should put that in place and make it happen. On the low cost side of things, maybe a very unpopular option, but I want to put it out there. If your site is 10, 15 years old, maybe it's time to shut it down. Maybe it's time to archive it. Alternatively, you could turn it into a static site. So you're no longer running, say, Drupal under the hood. It's just a bunch of flat files, super cheap, easy, inexpensive to host and scale, no security problems. You're off to the races. So definitely something that some organizations might, hugely benefit from. But I would imagine, most of you are here because of the extended support. And that's what we're going to talk about is, what is the extended support program, how it works, how you can use it, but it will enable you to run Drupal 7 for as long as you need to safely and securely into the future. And it really is an inexpensive, low-cost option that we've tried to make approachable to every organization. So there's no reason that you shouldn't be working with a Drupal 7 extended support vendor to ensure your success with Drupal 7 if you want to continue working with that moving forward. Extended support is not new to Drupal. It's been around for a while. It was first introduced in early 2016, I think February. Two companies, Tag One and My Drop Wizard, were approved to provide and still are providing long-term support. This model has been really successful. We've, I think, got it down, and it's going to be the model by which Drupal 7 extended support is going to operate. So I'll talk you through this. It's been very successful. There are a surprisingly large number of organizations that still rely on Drupal 6 long-term support. And this is really good news for people that are users of Drupal 7 because 6 was a really small platform from a user-based standpoint. So, Drupal 7 has a really robust and large ecosystem. When Drupal 6 LTS was first announced, we committed to running it for a year. It was extended for 3 years. And now both My Drop Wizard and Tag One have said, we're going to run it indefinitely. And that's because if there's enough demand for it and it can be viably done, we're going to provide it as a service because it's a win-win for both your organizations and our organizations and the Drupal community. So, you should expect the same from Drupal 7. So what is the Drupal 7 vendor extended support program, you ask? Well, first of all, at its core, the Drupal 7 vendor extended support program makes sure that your version of Drupal remains secure and safe to run so long as you want or need to. And in order to do that, the community is going to provide tested security patches for Drupal 7 core. So as I mentioned earlier, vulnerability comes out for Drupal 9. We determine that it's an issue for Drupal 7. Extended support vendors are going to work together and make that security fix available to people using Drupal 7. Similarly, in the case of doing business, we're working on Drupal sites for our customers, and we may discover a bug or a security vulnerability under the rules of the program. We need to make those patches open source. If we fix a problem with Drupal 7, we need to make it open source, and so those are going to be available to you as well. As part of the core extended support program, we're going to identify a specific list of modules. This list has not been identified yet, but it will be in the future and published online. And these will be covered officially as part of the program by Drupal extended support vendors. So you should assume that it's going to be the most popular modules. So these two things right here, Drupal 7 core patches and the patches for the most popular modules, should give almost most organizations out there the majority of what they need before we get into anything else. And I do want to quickly note that extended support vendors, or any vendor for that matter, are not proactively going out there and doing security audits and searching for vulnerabilities. Now, you can pay a company to do that, but what we're doing is we are reacting to vulnerabilities and bugs that we find in the process of doing business, or that are reported to us by users of the platform or other organizations. In order for this program to be viable, vendors that participate must commit to providing it for at least 3 years. So that gives, organizations that need long-term support, a commitment. If you're going to be able to run Drupal 7 for at least another 5 years from today, guaranteed. And I can assure you, with what we've seen from Drupal 6, you're probably going to be able to run it for another 5 years after that. So you're in good hands. You'll be able to run it for a long time. And as I mentioned, if we do find a bug, we have to open source it. Drupal is an open source platform and an open source community. And all of these patches must be put online, and we'll talk through how that works in a moment. But first, you're probably wondering, well, why would I want to participate or even pay for a Drupal 7 extended support program if all the security patches and vulnerabilities and everything I need is going to be put online? Why should I help contribute to this? And the fact of the matter is that at a high level, you don't technically have to pay for Drupal 7 extended support. You can, find these patches online, but without commercial support, vendors aren't going to decide to offer it longer than they've committed to. And so, if you as an organization need or want to see support years out into the future, it's in your best interest to help support these organizations. It's really important. And I think, it's not just an ask, it's up to vendors to provide you with services that are going to make it, beneficial for you to pay. We're going to go out of our way to come up with enhanced services on top of these basic things, so that you want to go out and purchase extended support so that you can better run and maintain your systems. So what are these things that vendors might provide? Well, I can't speak for all of the vendors, but I can give you a sense of what has been done to date and what we might be doing to give you an inkling. At the core, you should expect that organizations are going to monitor your site. They're going to tell you what security vulnerabilities, and bug fixes apply specifically to your systems. They're going to alert you to those updates, and then they're either going to apply them for you or with you to make sure that your sites stay up and running. So that's typically, a very base service. In addition to that, while the extended support program only covers a limited list of Drupal core modules, Tag 1 at least has in the past covered all open source contributed modules that are on Drupal.org, and we plan to do that for Drupal 7 as well. So if there's a module that's open source on Drupal.org, we're going to cover it. And so now any organization using Drupal 7 is entirely covered, no matter what they're using, except for their proprietary code, which they've been maintaining to begin with, and we can help you with anyway. Of course, just like you do now, you can work with a vendor to do bespoke development and database and infrastructure services. And this may not, seem like a thing now, but if you think about where Drupal 6 is, there aren't too many Drupal 6 developers around, and there certainly aren't many amazingly expert Drupal 6 experts in security and Drupal 6 core. And so, developing a relationship with an extended support vendor is really important, because as time goes on, it's going to be harder and harder for you to find the skill sets that you need to help maintain your system. There are also scenarios, like I mentioned, dependencies around things like PHP. We saw this with Drupal 6. The version of PHP that Drupal 6 is running, you need to upgrade it. In order to upgrade it, you need to make changes to Drupal. This turns out not to be very trivial. In fact, a lot of organizations, even very large organizations, either couldn't do it efficiently or effectively on their own, or couldn't do it at all. But it was relatively or surprisingly easy for us to do it, because we have this level of expertise and we've done it many times. That doesn't mean it doesn't take time, but it wasn't anywhere near as complex. And so again, partnering with a long-term support vendor is going to enable you to handle certain cases that you might not be able to do on your own. And of course, there are going to be other things. Tag 1 offers a dashboard, for example, as part of Tag 1 Quo. So if you have 6 sites or 600 sites, you can see what the status of each of the sites are, what their versions are, what is secure, what needs to be updated. So we provide you with management systems and other tooling to make it easier for you to maintain and run your systems. So again, we take feature requests. I'm sure other vendors do and have their own plans. If there's demand and there's funding and it's plausible to do, vendors are going to provide you with it. So who can provide you with Drupal 7 extended support? Well, technically, any organization can tell you that they provide extended support for any version of Drupal. But to be officially listed and approved as a provider, you need to be vetted, and it's a pretty strict vetting process run by the Drupal security team in conjunction with the Drupal Association. These official vendors are listed on Drupal.org, so you can see exactly who they are and how to get to them. You want to make sure that you're working with an approved and vetted vendor because this requires keeping Drupal core up and running. This requires keeping core secure. These are things that require a fair amount of expertise. And so the qualification process ensures that there's both the expertise needed as well as the commitment, that we're going to be here for a minimum of 3 years to ensure your continued success with the platform. A critical component, organizations need to have at least one active resource currently on the Drupal security team. The person needs to be in good standing. I think they have to be a member for at least 3 months, and they're also evaluated by their peers as a valuable contributing member of the team. So if you are thinking about becoming an extended support provider and you're not already on the Drupal security team, you need to go through that process first before you can apply. And then, of course, participation in Drupal core. You can't secure core, you can't update core if you haven't helped build core. And so in order to be a member of the program, you need to have demonstrated contributions through the issue queues in the community. You need to be a known quantity with a reputation that's made significant contributions to Drupal to show that you can continue to make these contributions in the future. And you also need to remain active in the program. So we don't want a scenario whereby one extended support vendor is doing all of the work and anyone can join and benefit. So in order to remain a member of the program and keep this a thriving ecosystem, you need to make a commitment to participate in the patches. And if your participation lags, you're going to be asked to step out of the program. The 2 Drupal 6 LTS providers, Tag One and My Drop Wizard, have been approved for Drupal 7 extended support already, as well as 3 other organizations that are well-known names in the community: Acquia, Drop Solid, and Lullabot. So you have 5 awesome options right now for Drupal extended support, and there may be some options that are added in the future. Keep an eye on Drupal.org. So let's talk about how Drupal 7 extended support is going to work in practice. Basically, the basic offering that every vendor must provide is going to follow a model very much like what the Drupal 6 long-term support model was. And the way that works, before Drupal goes end of life, all the work is done at Drupal.org and the issue queues. Once Drupal goes end of life and those issue queues are locked, vendors can't contribute there. So each vendor is going to have their own public open source code repository where they're going to organize and place all of their patches and updates. Links to these repos are going to be available on the Drupal 7 extended support page with these vendors. And vendors are also required to upload these patches to the Drupal 7 extended support issue queue on Drupal.org. And if you're saying, oh, okay, well, great, just keep in mind that the issue queue is a very long running list of everything from questions and comments to patches and other patches. And so, one of the reasons to work with a vendor to say monitor, these things and tell you what applies to you is they can automate that process and save you a lot of time. There are no formal conventions or numbering systems, and I think this is great because it provides vendors with the freedom and flexibility to do what they need and what best serves their customers. But it's important to note this because, how you number, let's say the last version of Drupal is 7.9, and Tag One comes out with 7.9.5, and someone else comes out with 7.10. Well, that doesn't mean anything. 7.9.5 could be way more advanced or have way more things that you might be interested in or need than the 7.10. So what is in a patch, how patches are numbered, how numbers change, is all up to the individual vendor. And general practice to date has been to release security updates as their own patch, but that isn't mandated. And non-security releases, you can put as many updates as you want in those patches. So, number of patches, it's going to be difficult to tell between vendors what's what. And so vendor updates are not compatible with each other. It doesn't mean that you can't switch between vendors, but it's not as seamless and easy as, say, pushing a button and making it happen. It is very doable, but because of these factors, you need to keep that in mind. Also, vendors can choose how they deliver updates. Pull requests. They can email you. They can ping you in Slack. They can apply them for you. It's really up to you and your vendor as to how you work and deliver those updates. There are some rules that we'll talk about in a sec, but there is no set release schedule. Right now Drupal has a set release schedule. There are security updates, releases at certain times. Extended support vendors can release things, with the exception of security releases, pretty much whenever and however they want. The one exception is security releases. Because of the impact one bug might have on other versions of Drupal, that must be coordinated. There are no community announcements, though, for security releases for legacy versions of Drupal. When a vulnerability comes out, if you're working with a Drupal extended support vendor, they will notify you that that is out there, or you can monitor the issue queue for extended support on Drupal.org and find it yourself. But there isn't going to be a Drupal community security announcement and broadcast to let you know about these. And the last thing, you have to be on the final end of life release version of Drupal 7 to work with any Drupal 7 extended support vendor patches. So if the last version of Drupal 7 is 7.10 and you're still running 7.5, you're not going to be able to start applying the extended support patches until you upgrade to that last version. Vendors will help you get there if you're not there already. And there are some rare exceptions in cases where, we've done some custom patches around that, but always get you back to that point. So keep that in mind as well. Another important thing, we must follow security policies and procedures, which means first and foremost that members of the security team cannot discuss security issues and matters outside of the security team. Tag One has many people on the security team. They can't tell me anything about what's going on in the security team. I don't know about a security release and vulnerability until the public does. Similarly, vendors can't tell their customers. And so, working with a vendor gives you, puts you in a position to move very quickly and enables you to execute as soon as that vulnerability is announced. But it doesn't give you any advanced insight, and you do not get any advanced access to a patch. But as soon as that patch is released, you're going to get it. You're going to be notified, and we'll help you get it in place. And then, we really do try to have extended support releases at or near official releases for security issues. So if there's a Drupal 9 vulnerability that comes out, turns out it applies to Drupal 7, we've done a great job to date making sure that the end-of-life versions of Drupal get security patches released almost at the exact same time, if not the exact same time, so that there isn't a gap between these two systems. There are some, backporting some of these patches is extremely complex, and so there are a few times where there's been a short lag, but I think you should have confidence that you will remain secure and there will be minimal to no lags. So Drupal 8, right? There's going to be organizations that, don't upgrade to Drupal 8, just like there are going to be organizations that don't, upgrade their Drupal 6 sites or don't upgrade their Drupal 7 sites. Unfortunately, it's the case that, not every organization is going to do this. So, what do these organizations do? And I just want to reiterate, that it's not going to be an officially sanctioned or approved Drupal 8 extended support program. Please do not count or rely on that happening. Nothing, as I said, is going to stop anyone from saying they'll offer to support 8, but keep in mind the insane complexity of doing so. You need to be an expert in Symfony, Twig, Guzzle, all of these different things. Even the biggest organizations in the world would have a challenge in being an expert at all of these things. There are some scenarios, let's say the Symphony community comes up with an extended support program along the lines of what Drupal is doing, and our communities can coordinate. That eliminates the major variable. And so there may be opportunities to make something happen in certain scenarios, but it really is extremely unlikely that that's going to be it's going to be happening. So really focus your effort and energy on upgrading to 9. It should not be very difficult. We can help you get there as a community. There are lots of tools and systems to analyze your code and help you make it happen. But please, know that you need to move forward. So, before we hop into the Q&A, I just want to wrap up by saying, the key thing is to have a plan. It's to plan ahead. Is to know the timelines that we outlined, and to make sure that you execute well ahead of the deadlines, so that you're not in a position where you find yourself not knowing what to do. I hope I've left you with the impression that Drupal 7 is an awesome platform, and it will continue to remain an awesome platform for as long as you need it. I would be shocked if over 500,000 websites aren't still running Drupal 7 after end of life, based on what we've seen for Drupal 6. There's going to be a huge community out there. There's going to be a strong demand for extended support. You're in it together with a lot of people and a lot of vendors that are going to want to support you. So I think you can really be confident that if you're running Drupal 7 and you want to continue or need to continue running Drupal 7, that you can do so for at least 5 to 7 and probably even more years from today. And I don't know of too many organizations that are thinking about their technology 7 to 10 years out when it comes to their website. So I have to imagine that you're really well covered here. Really what we want you to be able to do is to make a business decision. When it makes sense for you to migrate, you should migrate. If it doesn't make sense for you to migrate, continue to use Drupal 7. People are going to continue to build and enhance it. We're going to continue to support it. It meets your needs. Your site is great. Why change it? Right? So please know that is a great option. Contact us or any of the vendors, and we'll help you understand these things in greater detail. And as far as 8 goes, historically the number changing from 8 to 9 was huge, and there was a lot of fear and fun around major version releases in the Drupal community historically. That is no longer the case. If you're keeping up with your minor releases, and I know you all are, this should be a very easy process. Drupal 10 was just announced to be released in June of 2020. And so what you're going to see moving forward, because of semantic versioning and our use of dependencies, you're going to see an increase in the release of major versions of Drupal, more so than you saw historically. So, every 2 years or so now, we're going to see major versions of Drupal that are coming out. So moving forward, it's going to be much easier, so much so to the point that after Drupal 7, there shouldn't even need to be a need for extended support or long-term support for Drupal, because we're going to make it so easy for you to continue running Drupal moving forward. Awesome. Thank you. Jeremy.
Michael, great job. We don't actually have any questions queued up, but everybody who's on the platform, feel free to jump on and post a question. Asking about, okay, there's our first question, aside from hi. Asking about the upgrade process. You can actually, so in Drupal, you used to have to be very specific about going from one version to the next, but now the upgrade process uses the migrate module and allows you to jump forward if you need to. So it's generally a good idea to upgrade to 8 to get ready for 9 before it's released, but there's no need to do that. You can jump versions, you can jump multiple versions if you have to. It is a big jump though from 7 to 8 or 9. Any other questions out there? Michael, that's a great Zoom background you have. We'll stand by for a couple minutes in case anybody else has questions. Looks like there's actually 5 more minutes, so feel free to type them out. Michael, do you have any questions?
I was just going to say, I'm thinking about all of the organizations that we worked with over the years for Drupal 6 support. And I was trying to think, there really haven't been any like complex scenario. Like there hasn't been like a scenario that we've like, oh, this can't happen. Like, has there ever been a time where, a company has come to us and said, hey, I need Drupal 6 long-term support. And we said, oh man, that can't happen. Like, has that ever been the case? Like, is that something that people need to be worried about?
No, the biggest challenge I think for people is especially with Drupal 6 websites is understanding how many dependencies a website has, and understanding that supporting keeping Drupal up to date is only part of the entire package. You also have to keep PHP up to date. You have to keep your operating system up to date, and that can be non-trivial, especially if you're running on a release that's no longer supported as well. But we've never had to turn anyone down. We've helped people migrate to more modern platforms. And it's anyone who wants to do this, it's certainly available. I do see another question that came in asking about the costs. We can't speak for other providers, but we can say that if you research out the Drupal 6 extended support costs, it can be done very, very affordably. Our own product starts at $150 a month, and it will be the same price for Drupal 7. And that gets you full access to any patches, notifications, and anything that you need to keep your site up to date. Let's see, I see another question on a different track. It says, so it's asking about whether this applies to core or other things. And extended support applies to all of core and all of the contrib modules that you have enabled. In fact, that's one of the big advantages of it, is that we are providing security support for any module you have. The only exception would be custom code that you've written. That would not be included in the monthly price. That would be something that if you wanted to do a security audit, that's something you would have to work out with a vendor, or to get security patches applied, or a security audit done. Happy to answer any other questions. We've still got 2 more minutes.
So let's say I'm an organization on Drupal 7, it goes end of life. I want to, make a change to views, fix a bug that I found in my a code. How does that work? For any extended support vendor, given the issue queues are locked and.
Yeah, so you can contribute back patches through the extended support queue. If you're just making a feature enhancement or a change, fixing a bug, that's probably not typically part of the extended support that is provided. So that's a patch that you would ultimately have to be maintaining on your own. Different solutions will have ways to address that, whether it's a manual solution or it's an automated solution, so that your patch doesn't conflict with any security patches that come along through the extended support service. But as with anything, you can continue to patch, improve, and make changes as necessary. Just understand that most vendors will only provide patches for the latest code base. And so if you've made large changes, that requires some specific support for your site, and that can be more expensive.
Potentially another reason to work with a vendor, even if you're going to be doing patches on your own, is to make sure that your patches are compatible with the larger community, that work other people are doing benefits you.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and we certainly we encourage people to continue to give back patches, to share patches, just like with any open with the Drupal project going so far as an open source project. One more question came through. What to do with modules, with Drupal 7 modules with no upgrade path, like web form or views? So that is if there is no upgrade path, that means that you're going to have to manually address that when you migrate to a new site. It depends on how complicated your views are, how complicated your forms are, and how much of the data behind them you need to preserve. But with the migrate module in core, all of that can be migrated. It's just that they're so flexible that there's no way to say, here's a button to push to automatically upgrade everything. there's certainly a lot of support online. There's a lot of resources for learning how to use the migrate module. And certainly there's vendors like Tag One or other vendors out there that can help you do that if that's something that you need help with accomplishing. Well, it looks like we're out of time here. Michael, thanks so much for preparing this talk and giving it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Awesome. Thanks everybody who attended. Hope you guys learned everything you need to know. If you have any questions, please reach out to us and check out tagone.com/EOL for more information.